Okay, everybody, so I have a little bit of a house update here if you'd like. Just recently, we got a whole brand new slider for the sunroom, and here it is. Unfortunately, I didn't think to make a video of the old one because I just thought of videoing this today when he just finished. So I figured, oh well, I'll just show you what the new one looks like. Right away, I can tell you there's some very good things about the newer one. For one thing is, all of you probably don't remember this, but on the old slider we had like this white lip that you would have to stand over. Now let me say it again, a step over in order to get onto the stoop below. The problem with that is if you weren't careful, you could easily walk without taking a step up and you can trip and then fall over. And what's there? Stones and brick. Yeah, you don't want to fall into that. So what's nice is you can see this is much more, I mean it's not completely level, but it's much more level with the floor on the inside compared to the old slider where you had that white lip that you had to step over. It was about, not this high, I'd say probably about this high. And that was definitely a hazard that I really didn't like having. And one of the main reasons it was actually replaced was because the old slider that we had, it was a Silverline slider by Anderson. It did not seal very well at all when it came to wind and things like that. It sealed fine when it came to precipitation and things, but basically in the middle of winter, even with the slider all the way closed, you could still feel air coming through the sides here. You could still if we got a really heavy wind in the winter, you could hear it whistle through. Yeah, very, very poor design. And just the way it closed, it felt very bad. And according to my mom, it was called the Builder's Special. I'm sure those two words just say enough as it is. You could probably get an idea where that's going. And already, this one is just so much nicer. It's fully sealed against the sides over here as well. So that's all good. And it's also made by Pella. You could probably see the name right there. Stamped onto the handle. And the only thing we can't use is, I'll tell you why. You may remember this is the old lock bar that we had on the old slider. And the reason why we can't use it is because this slider is kind of like the opposite of what the old one was. Basically, the stationary portion's on the inside and the sliding portion's on the outside. So that's why we can't really use the bar for this one. What we do have instead, believe it or not, the sunroom at the Long Island house had these little doorstop right here that you just go like that, and the latch retracts and you can open the door. And then opposite is true. Go to the left, comes back out. So, I mean, obviously, if someone wants to get in, they'll get in. But I mean, I guess it's something to have instead of nothing. So let me go ahead and unlatch this. And the lock is actually right here. It's behind the handle. You just kind of go like that. Now you can open the slider. The other thing I want to show you guys too is, you may wonder where the screen is. It's actually right here. It's one of those roll-up spring tension screens. Let me show it to you. See? Just like that. And now the screen is in front of the door opening if you want to just have the door open for ventilation. Now, this screen, it works, but it just seems kind of weird to me because, instead of having the standard sliding screen that you have on the outside like the old slider had, you have this thing in the middle which doesn't really get in the way or anything. It just seems kind of off, if you will. I mean, I guess it could seem different if it was on the left here, but I mean, this portion doesn't open, so maybe it wouldn't make much of a difference. And I guess this makes the most logical sense to put the screen over here and then have it come out and go over there. So, the only thing I guess that's one extra step with this new slider is if you want to just open the slider just for the sake of ventilation, you have to open the door and then close the screen accordingly, which we had to do in the other sunroom, but I mean, with the old slider, you just open the door and then the deal's done. But all things considered, I guess this really isn't all that bad. What is nice, though, is that even though this screen is spring-loaded, if you open it up, there's something to prevent it from just slamming open. I'll open it again right here. You can see it goes nice and easy. So again, it does the job, but just kind of a different design, I guess. Not really what you would expect. So actually, let's go ahead and go on the outside here. The door's already unlocked, so we just pull the door open. And one thing I want to show you too here is it has a double latch, as you can see, which is really nice. And this slider is designed in a way where if the slider is not fully closed, you can't lock the door. So it's impossible to lock yourself out, which is really nice. And yeah, so it has that double latch system. So going out here, and you can see how the outside portion of the slider is. My only concern, if you want to call it concern, is since this slider is now on the outside, this is now exposed to the weather. But to be fair, on the other sunroom, this was exposed to the weather since 1996, and only around the 2010 or so did it start getting kind of rough to move the slider. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But I mean, that is just one thing you have to take into consideration, where with the sliding portion being on the outside and the stationary portion being on the inside, you just have that. You may have to do a little bit of maintenance on once in a while. But all things considered, I mean, the slider is good in the sense that it insulates and seals a heck of a lot better than the old one did, by far. And you could just feel it when it gets closed and everything, and you just see how it goes from there. So there's a new slider. Again, I'm sorry I didn't get a video on the old one, but I didn't think of making a video on this until it all got replaced and it was all done. So it happens, no big deal. But so far, aside from the little quirks I mentioned about, I do like this slider a lot more than the old one that we had. So now the slider's all done, before I do that, you can see how well they, I meant to say, all this siding was taken off, and as you can see, they put it back on beautifully. Very well done job. This was unaffected down here, and everything over here as well. So it's like it was part of the house to begin with. I want to point it out before I forget. So there you go, new slider all installed. Now let me go ahead and get the other part of the video of what we had done today. Now for the second part of the video, you can see I'm in front of the air conditioners once again. And the reason being, believe it or not, we had a little bit of AC work done today. Nothing big or anything. Let me just tell you as to how this came to be. So either a day or two later, after I made the video of the first floor unit running, everything was fine for that day, as far as I remember, but it was either that night or maybe the night after, actually. I came to the laundry room to go ahead and get something, and I just happened to walk by this window, and I'm just standing there. I'm like, the compressor's sounding louder on this unit than it normally does. That sounds a little strange. Now, of course, it was in the middle of the night. So, of course, I just had to wait until the next day. But everything in the house, as far as I could tell, was running okay. So I was like, all right, tomorrow is going to be a cooler day. It's still humid, but cooler. Let me come on out here and see what the issue is. So I go ahead and I turn on both thermostats. And then I come out here, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely sounding a little bit louder than it normally does. So the first thing I do is, well, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm looking at both fans going, and I'm like, yeah, both fan speeds look to be about the same, and the motor feels cool, lukewarm to the touch. So I mean, that should be all good. So so the other thing I'm thinking of is, I think I might know what the issue is. So I let the unit run for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. Then I look over here. Where's my finger pointing? The sun's here. Look over here, and sure enough, that part of the pipe was starting to ice up. So I was like, I know what the problem is. Okay, so basically, it was a little bit low on refrigerant, let me say it again. Yeah, it was a little bit low on refrigerant, but I did some other things to kind of help diagnose the problem. The first thing I did was I was like, all right, well, first thing I'll do is, I haven't changed the air filters yet, so let me go ahead and do that. So I went to both air handlers for the basement and in the attic. And I went ahead and changed the air filters, turned this back on, let it run, same issue. So I'm like, all right, well, I know what the problem is. The refrigerant is kind of low. And unfortunately, when it comes to refrigerant, I am not licensed to handle that, so I cannot fix this problem. So we have to call the person. Basically, we called the people who installed our equipment back in 2016, but didn't really service it. So they gave us the name of another company that services them. Now, I'm not going to name the companies here, but I just will say I was like, all right. So I looked them up online, looked at the reviews. I know since 2010 I've taken online reviews with a grain of salt, but I figured, all right, well, all things considered, they've been around for a long time. Let's give them a try. So just this morning, actually, I was able to take a little bit of personal time from work, and the guy came around. Well, the guy showed up a little bit late, but that being said, some of you may remember way back in 2018, I made a video about how I was getting really annoyed of lack of progress with the backyard and how annoying it is when people don't show up for work. Well, see, this guy did it right, which immediately I thought was a good sign. He came about 45 minutes late, but he called us ahead of time and said, "Hey, listen, I'm very sorry. I'm stuck at this other job, but as soon as I'm done here, I'll head over to you guys." And that's totally fine. I get it. Lots of times jobs can take time, so you're going to be there longer than you anticipated for. And I greatly appreciate the fact that he actually called us to let us know and didn't just not show up. So that was a good thing in my book. So the guy comes by, very nice guy. He seems to be about, I'd say, roughly my age, maybe just a little bit younger. And so I immediately tell him what the problem is, and he says, "Oh, okay." So he's like, "Yeah, this doesn't look too bad." The first thing he actually commented on was he saw the way these units looked, and he's like, "Wow, these are 7 years old, like, or almost 7 years old. You guys take good care of them." I'm like, "Yeah, I wax the tops, I keep the coils clean twice a year," and he's like, "Fantastic. These look fantastic for their age." So that was good. So I said, "Okay." So what I did was I went inside the house, turned on both thermostats for the first floor, and then this thing kicked right on. And measuring the refrigerant was a little bit tough, only because it was a really cool. It was about 70 degrees inside the house, but it was really cool out this morning during the day, or rather early this morning. It was about 50-something degrees, which is pretty low temperature for an air conditioning unit. But he basically went ahead and put the measurements on, checked his gauges, and he looked at the gauges very carefully, and he's like, "Yeah, we're definitely a little bit low, but in all seriousness, this is not that bad at all." And he asked me, like, "When did you guys last have the refrigerant checked?" I said, "It was checked the last time these were put in, which was like about 6-7 years ago." And he's like, "Wow, this really isn't all that bad." So it's like, all right, I'll go ahead and put some refrigerant in, and I'll also go. And he didn't skip any steps. He went downstairs to check the temperature of the liquid line, and also to see what that is. Let it run for 10 minutes so we can measure the subcooling. Make sure that, I don't know what that term stands for exactly, but an HVAC person would know if you want to comment below. And after he put the refrigerant in, he let it run for about again 10 minutes, and then he measured the liquid line temperature. Checked the subcooling, and he's like, "Yeah, this thing seems to be holding pressure. Your subcooling is good. The pressure is good given the temperature outside. Yeah, you guys should be all set." And as the refrigerant was going in, I could tell you right now that the compressor started to sound happier, and I was inside the mudroom there, and it sounded quieter again as well. So I'm like, "Oh, that's definitely a good sign when it sounds normal again like that." So he says, "Yeah, all things considered, really how long you've had these units, and basically all things considered, it's like, yeah, it's not uncommon enough to be just a little tad low like you were." And this unit was fine, by the way. And I basically just explained to him everything I've done, and he's like, "That's fantastic." He's like, "So really the only thing you can't do is handle refrigerant?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much it." And we were having a good conversation and everything. The guy was fantastic. I told him about replacing the run capacitor in this unit last year in August. And he's like, "How'd you know it was bad?" I told him, "Well, the same thing I told you guys. Vibrating more, compressor was louder, motor was hotter, fan was slower." And he's like, "Wow, good diagnosis, man. You did a good job there." So it's nice when you hear stuff like that. And basically, so all things considered, he went down to the he went down to the basement and everything. And then when we're all done, he was here for maybe, I'd say a half hour, just to give it run time and check everything. But after a half hour, he was like, "Yeah, you guys should be all good to go." And I even commented to him when he was in the basement about how I'm really glad that they put the filter dryer for the lines inside the house. Like, this one's in the basement, this one's in the attic. And he's like, "Yeah, they really should do that." He says it's so dumb that they put the filter dryers outside because of weather exposure, and because the paint on the filter dryer is basically what protects it. And it says once that comes off and it starts rusting, that's when you start having your leaks. So yeah, and I know what that's like with the Lennox unit that we had in on Long Island. And I even commented to him about, and one thing we were on the same page about, which was pretty awesome, was I commented to him about how I'm so glad these units are like, the base models, meaning they're single stage on and off. And he's immediately like, "Oh yeah, man, you cannot beat that, because so many modern units now with the variable speeds, they have circuit boards, extra electronics," and these are his words, not mine. Circuit boards, extra electronics, and even like some of the simple units, like even the Lennox units, believe that nowadays. He's like, "Yeah, there's so many electronics, so much things to break down." He says, "You got good units here, simple on off. You're very good to have these." So I was very happy to hear that, and it's kind of cool how we're on the same page about stuff like that. It really is fantastic when you hear things like that. Okay, everybody, so I think that's everything. That was a little bit of a discussion right there. Hopefully you guys didn't get too bored. If you watched through it, that's great. If not, well, I'm sorry, but it was kind of a talking video. Yeah, so everything's all set. We got the new slider. Air conditioning is all good to go. And one thing I am going to do at some point is, I know Jay wanted to see a video of startups. I probably will do those maybe sometime this weekend or next week if it's warm enough out, but we'll see how that goes. So anyway, yeah, new slider, air conditioning work, and things are back in tip-top shape. So if you guys thought that was kind of a long video for just talking, I apologize, but it happens sometimes. If you liked it, thanks for watching. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.